Welcome back to the Dan Corder Show. South Africa is a movie.
Welcome to the watch party!
We are so blessed in this country to have some world-class, phenomenal journalists. As you've been watching on this show, South Africa is a movie. It is absolutely raucous and insane, and there is so much to talk about. It's just the most complicated, interesting country on the planet. And one of my favorite journalists is Charles Leonard, who's recently won a prestigious journalism prize for a piece that he did on the history of the Afrikaans language, because it turns out that a lot of the history of Afrikaans, before it became a white power, like white supremacist language, was rooted in communities of Black and Muslim people speaking early doors Afrikaans. And so I'm thrilled to welcome him here. Please make some noise for his first appearance on the Dan Corder Show. It's Charles Leonard. Thank you so much for being here. Did I tell any lies in my intro?
No lies.
No lies.
Not a single one detected.
Excellent. So you just won a Sivuyile Award for a piece that you did. Please tell us what you wrote about and then tell us the significance of the award.
Last year I was the arts editor at the Mail and Guardian. And at Easter, there's always what's called the God edition, where we write about anything about religion. And I got this book, a fascinating book called Afrikaans Muslim Writing Tradition.
Okay.
And I decided to write about it because this book was telling me what you said in your intro, the first ever Afrikaans was written in Arabic script.
What? Really?
In Arabic script.
That is almost
and we were
unbelievable.
Never taught anything like that.
Yeah, for sure.
So I wrote a piece about it. And this piece got me the Sivuyile Award for the ones category.
It's amazing. Okay, so tell us what you wrote about and what you discovered. How is it that Afrikaans was spoken by Muslim people of color initially and then written down for the first time in Arabic?
So the story has an interesting start. In 1985, there was an imam in a mosque in the Bo-Kaap.
1985.
Yeah, 1985.
Okay.
You're
going back. I was going to say we wrote down Afrikaans before 1985. Okay.
Yeah. And he had his sermon for the first time in 1985 switched to English.
Okay.
And the old guys, Black guys, of course, in this congregation said, no, this is nonsense. You have to stick to Afrikaans because they use Arabic and Afrikaans in this mosque.
Okay.
And they asked this expert called Ahmad Davids. He's an expert on culture and so on. Do research about Afrikaans, about Bo-Kaap, and about our mosque. And this is where it got uncovered. Fascinating stuff. And he is the person who discovered that in the 1840s. That's before you, me, and Jacob Zuma were born. That in the Muslim schools, the religious schools, the laities started writing in Afrikaans.
Wow.
They used Arabic writing
to write Afrikaans down.
So it was for the religious stuff, but also love letters, shopping list, everything like that. And they started writing in Afrikaans. So that was before the official Afrikaans was written. And these were Black people, slaves, the urban folks, rural people. They were writing Afrikaans in Arabic.
And of course, this has made such an impression in your piece and people who read it and the award givers, but also in this audience, because that is just so opposite of what we were taught, right?
Precisely.
Afrikaans is the language of the oppressor, the language of apartheid, the language of the pre-apartheid coalition governments. And I'd love to hear for you, because you started this by saying, I was not taught that. What were you taught initially as a laity about the Afrikaans language's origins that apparently left out so much?
My mother tongue is Afrikaans. And I always felt this sense of resistance towards the language, even though I love the language and there's some great writers and some real progressive people in there. But we were taught that in, I think it's 1870s, that there was some organization that was started called Die Genootskap van Regte Afrikaners, the Society of True Afrikaners. White, owns with long beards, sour people, doer people, and they took Afrikaans and said, this is ours. And they turned it into a nationalism, and it evolved. In 1923, Afrikaans became an official language. In 1933, the Bible was officially translated into Afrikaans. And it's important to mention that because the church was used to push this thing of Afrikaner nationalism, to make it a white language, and it was the language of the oppressors. And that's what we were taught. I was at school in the 1970s, and that's what they taught us in the history textbooks.
Wow.
In addition to that, apartheid was right.
Yes.
This is what they taught us. And reading this, and of course I know as someone who was involved in politics in the 80s against these types of people, I didn't care that much, but this made me feel really good when I read this.
Yeah.
And I saw this language of mine is actually a language that has a fantastic history, much better history than what we thought we knew it had. This tainted history.
And I mean, the consequence of that is still so evident, right? Because Afrikaans is spoken by so many millions of people who are not white, as a home language, as their mother tongue, particularly in the Western Cape as well as in other places. That's fascinating. So I have to ask, you won this award, but did you get backlash for this piece? Because I can imagine a piece that pretty much skewers the foundation myth of a white supremacist language, or branded as a white nationalist language, cannot have gone down fantastically with some of the readers who came across it.
Funnily enough, no.
Oh, really?
I guess I'm a bit of a detribalized Afrikaner, so...
They've already given up on you.
Yeah, him. You were saying millions of people in our country speak Afrikaans, mother tongue. 7 million. And the interesting thing, 60% of those people are black.
So more people of color speak Afrikaans than white people.
That's correct.
And yet our conception is such an apartheid hangover conception of who owns Afrikaans and what it's used for, and
and that again, that thrills me. That makes me feel good about it.
No, I know.
And all those guys who, from the pulpit, in the classroom, who used to tell me that this is the language, our language, and those are the guys who caned me. We were talking about that earlier in the other discussion. Those were the guys, they were wrong.
So do you think, and I'm not asking you to be the spokesperson of Afrikaners or progressive Afrikaners or progressive Afrikaans speakers, but do you think that in the last handful of years, I don't want to say since 1994, but do you think that there has been an evolution amongst at least some parts of the white Afrikaner community to be more accepting and acknowledging of the fact that they have a kinship with people of color who share the language and speak it together? Or is there still very much a sense that we do die regte ordentlike Afrikaans and everyone else doesn't really speak Afrikaans the way we do and are somehow second, like beneath us as Afrikaans speakers?
I think there is quite a split. I think there's more people, and yes, I can't be the spokesperson for all of them.
I'm just asking for your impression.
Yes.
As somebody who spent your years writing about what is going on in South Africa and your experience of it,
I covered right-wing politics in the late 80s. And I think there are far fewer of those reactionary types, even though there has been a kind of a backlash, a growth. Like internationally, the right wing has become stronger. So there is the Steve Hofmeyers of this world. They're still very vocal. They've got money. White people, they still have a lot of privilege.
Yeah.
And so those people have money to buy influence. But there's also at schools, kids are no longer just in white schools. They have black friends. They have black friends who speak Afrikaans. So I don't want to be a Pollyanna, but I think there has been much more of a growth of acceptance of a non-racial thing, especially since 1994.
Epic. Well, thank you so much for all of your work, your decades of work, and for this fantastic piece. Congratulations on the Journalism Award. These are the kinds of stories that we all need to hear more about in South Africa. Charles Leonard, everybody. Come on. Amazing.